for EU strategy, autonomy, and economic security. And ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our next keynote speaker, Mr. Maroš Šefčovič, who's the Executive Vice President of the European Commission. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Maroš Šefčovič.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you, dear President Calvino, dear Nadia, dear ministers. I see that my good friends and colleagues, Vice President of the EIB are here as well, and I also would like to greet all of you, ladies and gentlemen. At first, I want to underscore that I'm very happy to be here with you at the EIB Group Forum, because this is indeed a very important opportunity to look to the future and to discuss how we can work better together, given the transformative task at hand underpinned by the current geopolitical context and a fierce global competition. And we are meeting at a crucial moment in the debate around the future of our planet, but also about the future of Europe. All the broadcasts this morning been hit by the news that for the first time in the history, the global temperature threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius was breached. And for the 12 consecutive months, so we indeed have the warmest year of our planet since the measurement been taking place. And that's just the indicator how serious and accelerated global warming we are perceiving the last years. As you know, on Tuesday, the Commission recommended 90% as a target for reducing emissions by 2040 and listed also enabling conditions necessary to reach the deal. And the leaders of Europe will discuss the strategic agenda and next priorities at the Special European Council in April, while President Calvino will have a chance to speak with the ECOFIN Council on these issues as well later this month. The question at the heart of the debate is how to decarbonize our economy and achieve climate neutrality while preserving the competitiveness of our industry and ensuring a transition which is socially fair, just, and inclusive. And there is no doubt a formidable task stands before us, one that requires us to move on from a business as usual approach, but I would say to move on into a fully transformative mode. And I'm convinced that Europe has what it takes to become a continent with a globally competitive and sustainable economy, stable high-quality jobs, and high resilience against future crises. Over the past 4+ years, we have put in place a state-of-the-art legislative framework on climate and energy. But we need to make sure the European Green Deal is fit to face the new geopolitical reality. And we must ensure it can respond to the key socio-economic challenges, not least the fierce competition for investment in the clean technologies, including through massive subsidy schemes and local content requirements. And here, the European Investment Bank, the biggest multilateral financial institutions in the world, has a pivotal role to play. And I think this was very clearly demonstrated by the lineup of the commissioners you have here yesterday and today. We are all here because we want to work with you, because we need you for these transformative tasks. But looking to the future of the European Green Deal, I see 5 key priorities to create an adequate enabling framework for the transition. First, we need a stronger single market for the European Green Deal. We must swiftly and fully implement the measures designed to help us achieve our 2030 targets. And this will require a paradigm shift towards a more collaborative and diagnostic approach and more intense dialogue with member states, regional and local authorities, social partners, industry, and all stakeholders. Second, we need to apply a new industrial logic for the green competitiveness. Think of it as a new industry decarbonization deal. The objective here is to help our industry develop a large domestic market and strong, sustainable, and globally competitive industrial base, especially for clean tech. To do this, we must create a business case for the transition in Europe. When I talk to business leaders across Europe, nobody doubts that our legislative framework for the Green Deal is state-of-the-art, is probably most advanced and best in the world. But what they're telling me as well is, and now we have to complement this excellent legislative framework with a business case for our activities, so we can bring that entrepreneurial energy, that spirit, and the private investment into making sure that we would implement all the measures and we would achieve the goals we set for ourselves to be climate neutral continent in the second half of the century. We also need to work further and develop in even greater details the principle of competitive sustainability, including by rewarding European companies investing in sustainable technologies by applying more non-price criteria in public procurement processes. We simply have to find the ways how we would reward the companies which are sustainable, which have low carbon footprint, which treat their work decently, and not to punish them by the results of public procurement, which would always go for the cheapest alternative coming very often from some faraway countries in Asia. Third, we need a new deal for infrastructure, critical to unlocking the electrification of the European Union. And fourth, we must shore up public trust in and support for the green transition. And fifth, we must provide finance fit for the transition. And let me be clear on this point. Securing more funds for climate-related investment at the EU level and front-loading, and I would underline front-loading this financing and easing access to it, are make-it-or-break-it conditions for the green transition. At least 700 million in additional investment each year will be needed to achieve the objectives of European Green Deal and Repower EU by 2030. And I know that I'm talking to the distinguished audience with high financial expertise. And I know that you understand these numbers perfectly. So I will put it into different perspective. Let's look at 2022. That was the year of crisis, but still. 600 billion euros we spent on imported fossil fuels. 390 billion we spent on energy subsidies. And from this almost 400 billion, less than 90 billion went to support the renewables. So what I'm saying is that the money is in the system. We just need to shift them for something which is not burned and lost, but what produces and stays and delivers, and what will be our European indigenous source of the energy, jobs, and GDP growth for the future. And of course, the bulk of these funds will have to come from the private sector. However, public sector has a key role to play in mobilizing this investment. The great thing about your forum here in Luxembourg is that you have a chance to network, to interact, to exchange the views, and I very much appreciate the ideas I just heard from the European Bank Federation calling for the strategic vision on the role of financial sector in the Green Deal. Exactly this is what we need, and I hope that with all of you and with my colleague in the European Commission, we will present some ideas to our leaders for the strategic agenda discussion, for Mr. Draghi's report, and also present some concrete ideas for the work of the next Commission. When I'm talking about this important task, I have also to underline that we believe that EIB will play the key role in this transformation. I'm absolutely convinced that the EIB, being the EU's climate bank, and given its impressive financial firepower, has also the responsibility to lead these efforts. And I see a need for deepened cooperation between the Commission, industry, the EIB, especially when it comes to financing high-risk projects of strategic importance for our decarbonization that commercial banks are hesitant to support. This moment in time, with the change of guard in the leadership of the EIB, and I see that my very good friend, President Hoyer, just entered the room, and I would like to thank him for excellent cooperation and enormous work he did for Europe and for the EIB, are very important moment where we can shift our focus of the Green Deal from setting, I would say, the legislative framework into the implementation. And I think that's also the right moment for us to collectively consider how the bank's current framework could be upgraded to fit the challenges we face. We should look together at what needs to be changed to give bank more agility and to make the most of this financial firepower. In the Commission, we are now discussing with my colleagues what kind of technological roadblocks we have in different bits and pieces of our legislation which are preventing us to go faster towards our Green Deal goals. And I know that over the last time there was kind of piling up of the different rules, conditionalities, which very often are restraining the agility of our financial sectors, or be it concretely of the EIB. So let's look at them and let's see what we can do better to make sure that we can get the investments much faster, in more agile way to where we strategically need them for the future. And of course, we also have to think collectively to make sure that we would have collective appreciations of that priority financing areas and make sure that they are in line with our main policy objectives. I'm convinced that we need a giant leap forward. Small step, lacking ambitions, will not do. And with that in mind, and following up on your request for the ideas, Madam President, dear Nadia, I have 3 suggestions that I would like to put forward today about the future direction of the bank. First, the bank should establish within its structure a dedicated, sustainable critical raw materials task force, focusing exclusively on facilitating projects along the entire critical raw materials value chain. These raw materials are the basic elements we need to make the products that drive the twin green and digital transitions, like batteries, electric motors, electrolyzers, and photovoltaics. Simply put, without critical raw materials, there will be no Green Deal, there will be no future technologies development in Europe. And yet, the EU currently supplies only 1% of its own needs for the key raw battery materials such as lithium, cobalt, and nickel, and some 98% of our rare earths come from China. As you probably know, I was very much involved in diversification of the gas supplies to Europe. And I know how difficult this task still is. And therefore, I can only tell you that if it comes to critical raw materials, our dependency already today is much higher than it ever was if it comes to the fossil fuels. So therefore, I'm paying so much focus on making sure that if it comes to the critical raw materials, we gear up to the new levels. Because you know that it is increasingly difficult to secure supplies of raw materials for our economy, as projects in third countries are subject to fierce international competition. We have seen over the last couple of years that everything can be weaponized, from the data to the supply of energy and also critical raw materials. And therefore, we have also to overcome the situation when new projects in Europe, which can deliver us the critical raw materials we need, struggle to attract financing. So I think it is imperative to create this task force, to bring together experts from across the EIB group, including EIB Global, to cater for different kinds of funding instruments that would be needed and should be involved. We need to set clear objectives while equipping the team with the right tools to do the job, and they should be also able to take higher risk than a normal bank, innovating new financing solutions to address market failures and acting as a venture capital when necessary. Given the strategic importance of critical raw materials for economic security of Europe, policy considerations must sometimes take precedence over profit. The task force would also need to lead and coordinate the efforts of national funds, dedicated to raw materials which have been recently created, such as those in Germany, worth around 1 billion euros, and France, worth around 2 billion euros, and a new 500 million euro fund launched by the EIT, Inno Energy, and Demetra, who is an actor in the venture capital and private equity. I think we need to work with the network to leverage the funding and to have the proper line of projects which can make the difference in the shortest possible time. And of course, it would be great if we could partner also with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, as well with other private financial institutions. This task force could work closely with the Commission's standing subgroup on financing, which is being created by the Commission to mobilize financing for strategic raw materials projects to which EIB, the EBRD, and other key banks and institutions will act as observers. And I'm confident the task force would receive the full support of member states and would send a powerful signal to the industry. And let me be honest, how else we can do it? Who else, if not you and us together, can advance in this very important task? Madam President, the second suggestion. Here, I would propose the creation of the European Green Deal Infrastructure Task Force, dedicated to supporting the development of infrastructure needed for the transition. These represent, again, an astronomical challenge, given that Europe will have to at least triple its electricity generation by 2050. And it is a task which will require the modernization and expansion of grids at distribution and transmission level to integrate the growing share of renewable and low-carbon energy and connect storage and charging stations. 40% of our distribution grids are 40 years old and need to be modernized and expanded. While the cost of investment in electricity grids in this decade alone amounts to 584 billion euros, this just underlines the challenge ahead of us. And the development of this infrastructure, as you, I'm sure, would agree with me, is an essential condition for unlocking electrification, which will reach up to 70% by 2050, but which has stagnated at around 23% in the last decade. So what was the consequence of this stagnation? This has led to the thousands of connection requests for renewable energy generation, storages and heat pumps being rejected to be connected to the grid due to the insufficient grid capacity. So we invest billions in windmills, in photovoltaic panels, in storages, but they are idling because we cannot get this renewable energy to the final consumer. So let's not waste the money. Let's invest in the grids which can carry this renewable energy where it's needed. And of course, we also would need to have another look how to finance hydrogen infrastructure, carbon capture, storage and utilizations, charging points, and many more. The good thing is that there are projects ready for implementation. We have adopted legislation allowing for swift permitting. And the key issue, however, is the enormous amount of upfront funding needed to get this project off the ground. As you know, the transmission system operators are heavily regulated business, so there should be not the worry that you will not get your money back. But they do not have the front-loading capital to kind of upgrade and invest at the beginning, and therefore we need to find a bridge how we can help them to invest in a modern grids. Again, positive story is that until now, the best electricity grid in the world is in Europe. The best companies making cables, substations are in Europe. So let's use it and then modernize the grids, because they're absolutely essential part of our transformation. And I believe that allocating money specifically into this infrastructure and putting together a team of skilled experts working with the Commission and the industry would help sharpen also the EIB's ability to make a difference in this very crucial sector. To boost our efforts, on the 26th of February, I will launch a clean transition dialogue on infrastructure with representatives of all types of infrastructure. So it would be transmission system operators for electricity, for gas, for hydrogen, charging station operators, storage operators, cable manufacturers, substation producers. All of us, and of course, we would wholeheartedly invite the EIB to join these discussions, because it would be great to start this cooperation, I would say, with a full setup. Third and last recommendation for today would be about the need to restore technological neutrality. I mean, we have to admit, and this is the comment I'm addressing to all of us. We need to be less dogmatic. We need to be more pragmatic about our energy sources, about how we can work with green, but also low carbon sources of energy and hydrogen. And I think that for the future, we should accept and promote all low carbon energy technologies, which would help us to bridge the gap as we accelerate the rollout of renewables generation, especially in the midterm. That is why the Commission, in cooperation with Member States and industry, is launching the European Industrial Alliance on Small Modular Reactors. The SMR technology holds important potential for decarbonizing our energy sector and boosting our security of energy supply. And here again, I want Europe to be a leader in these emerging technologies. Financial institutions will have to be part of the dialogues on SMRs, and so I would again encourage the EIB and other financial institutions to work with private sector to create the right conditions for development of SMR value chains in Europe. So, ladies and gentlemen, the European Investment Bank is a critical part of our efforts to build green, healthy and prosperous future for Europe, and to strengthen international partnership based on reciprocity. Here, given the resources available, we should focus our efforts with the Global Gateway on strategic priorities, such as critical raw materials projects that can best support our path to climate neutrality and ensure positive spillover effects internationally. Beyond that, we should also search for partnerships in regions where such a cooperation has been missing in the past. This will help us to develop proactive climate diplomacy, which supports our goals of diversifying supply chains and reducing dependencies. So I look forward to working with you in the months ahead as we strive to make the most of the EIB's potential. And this might involve taking on more risk, but without risk, there is no reward. My coach in my young athletic times was always highlighting no pain, no gain. And my key takeaway message for all of you in the EIB and national promotional banks is that I know the European Investment Bank, you are a formidable institution. We are very proud to have the biggest public bank in the world. And we are very happy to work with you on these challenges, tasks of the future, because after what we have seen as a key development in the world and Europe over the last couple of years, if there is a time to rise to the occasion, it's now. It's now where we have to roll up our sleeves. It's now where we need to use the huge potential of our biggest bank, of Europe's climate bank. And I just really would like to reassure you that we in the Commission are absolutely ready for the closest cooperation. And I'm sure that together we will deliver. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maroš Šefčovič, for having highlighted the recommendations and priorities of the European Commission for the EU going forward. You are now invited to